Oh, here's Ellen right here if you want. And we have that over here.
Damn, the meeting just started.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're on item number 2.
Here you go.
Out there.
Will you pass that to him? That's our agenda there, and we're just on roll call. So Alan Bernard,
Here.
Mike McAleer,
Here.
Sharon Delabar. Here. Joe Murray,
Here.
Bill Herman,
Here.
Johanna Barty. Here. And that's everyone. We've got an open seat from, Forks.
Still.
They're going through the process of appointing someone there. And, and I just thought we could go around the room and people from different cities, municipalities, et cetera, could introduce themselves. Let's see, Ron.
I'm Ron Garcelon. I'm the Utilities Manager for Clallam County.
I'm Megan Euchre. I'm Resource Analyst, City of Swell.
I'm Alan Barnard, General Community Ne'er-do-well and retired.
Okay, and so just doing.
I'm Bruce Emery with Clallam County DC.
Okay,
I'm Tim Zoltan, Housing and Grant Resource Director for Clallam County.
Ethan Walker, Housing Administrator for the City of Port Angeles.
Amy Doherty, I'm the Public Works Administrative Manager for the City of Swin.
okay, and the rest of us are Clallam EDC folks.
She hit that.
I guess I should mention, show the opportunity if I'm more.
Yeah.
Why would I be here?
Okay,
Man, here,
next one is item number. Oh, Matt, I missed you. I'm sorry.
I'm just sitting here passionately.
That's
All good. I know it, but so thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and so the next item up, if you want to take this, is item number 3, and we've got Mark Lang here, the county CFO, who's produced this document, which I printed out for the people that are here, and for those online, Mitch is going to share the screen, the Excel doc. Or if you would like to share it, Mark, you can. And thanks for joining us. I know Mark wasn't feeling well today, so he's calling in from home.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not there. You're right. I've unfortunately came down with a pretty bad cold. I've been out of commission for the last several days. So, but I did not want to miss this discussion today. So let me share my screen with you, and hopefully we can get this to work here. Bear with me.
Where's Paul?
Okay.
City of Forks, thank you. And Sarah Van Osdale.
Yeah, right.
Can everyone see my screen okay?
Well, we've got it in front of us.
Pretty small.
Yeah.
Hard to
Can you
read.
zoom in?
Small.
Yeah, let me do that. Hold on one second. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I know there's a lot going on in this spreadsheet, but I kind of wanted to walk everyone through really what, how we are, how we measure the Opportunity Fund in terms of its capacity to take on additional projects. This is a format that I had developed a few years back that we periodically give an update to the commissioners. The situation around the Opportunity Fund has obviously changed for the better over the last year or so. The state legislative has passed an extension basically allowing the sunsetting of the Opportunity Fund to be extended to, I believe, July 2054. And so what this spreadsheet basically does, it's a very simple, relatively straightforward summary of our revenue sources, so our projected sources of funding, which are obviously the tax itself, the 0.9 tax, as well as interest income and some other income. You can see that in 2024, this fund began with a beginning fund balance of $7,733,290. And we are projecting tax revenue this year of $1,921,000. Interest income of approximately $193,000, some other income of $18,000, and total sources of revenue this year of about $2.1 million. In terms of debt service, we have a couple of different loans that are serviced by the Opportunity Fund. The first one is the Carlsberg Sewer Loan, which matures in June 2048, and you can see that requires a loan payment costs of about $366,000 in 2024. We also have a loan that is in really kind of the wrap-up stages, Department of Commerce. This was the Skills Center loan, which actually matures January of 2025, so that will be wrapping up. The next debt service funding commitment that we have earmarked for the Opportunity Fund, and I want to emphasize earmarked, is a Department of Ecology Clallam Bay CQ sewer loan that the county entered into in relation to about a $6.8 million sewer system grant and loan renovation project of the Clallam Bay CQ Sewer Fund, which I know Ron Garcelon is there in the room and can give you further information on that. We have not formally as a county allotted Opportunity Fund monies in support of this debt service, which again will require a 20-year payment of approximately $117,000, beginning with a semi-annual payment that will be due in December 2025. This is a loan that we have taken out with the Department of Ecology that we anticipate based upon the size of the sewer system out there. Unfortunately, it is not in a position with the number of system users, both residential and commercial, to be able to fully service the debt service costs of this project. And we anticipate the Opportunity Fund will be looked to provide the debt service support for this system, similar to what we did for Carlsberg. The next item, and these are actually not debt service, but actually just ongoing support in relation to the other one of the other permitted uses of Opportunity Fund, which is providing ongoing support for our local EDC. And then as well as some funding for the CIE. And then these next few areas, and I apologize, this column right here, this actually should be zero, this transfer to Carlsberg Sewer for expansion. We were initially expecting to do an extension of the Carlsberg system to the Gupster area of that system. And this was this $350,000 that you see here was initially contemplating a smaller project that was going to be followed on by a larger expansion into Gupster with a full gravity fed system in 2026 and 2027. We have since pulled back and decided not to move forward with the smaller version of Gupster, and instead we are looking at delaying that until 2026, 2027. The next column is Fork Sewer, which I believe this group is familiar with. This includes both the original amount that was granted for the Fork Sewer rebuild project of $2,375,610, as well as the recently added $295,000 additional ask that the committee and the board recently approved for that project. The next area, and again, these are placeholders, and I know Ron Garcelon will be talking about this next one, are relating to transfers to the Clallam Bay CQ sewer for basically replacement and upgrades of their remaining lift stations that are required there at Carlsberg, I'm sorry, not Carlsberg, Clallam Bay CQ. We have indirects, which again, many of our funds are charged to indirects by our general fund. And that's what this represents here. And that brings us to really what our total uses of the funding are by year. And so again, this basically takes us out through all the way out to 2054, which again is when the tax ends, and we have scheduled basically what we know of in terms of what our debt service and other obligations are. And you can see that short of any additional uses of opportunity fund monies, these monies basically accumulate to very large sums over a period of time. This is a very different story than what we were looking at when we were looking at opportunity fund potentially sunsetting in 2032, in which case we were basically needing to conserve opportunity fund monies to service the remaining debt that was pledged under the opportunity fund. Since that tax funding source was extended to 2054, that obviously gives us a lot more flexibility to do more with those funds, since we don't have that looming deadline hanging over us going forward. The other tab I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the same. Let me zoom this in. This is the same exact sheet that you were looking at before. But one of the things that we've traditionally done for our commissioners is layering in what is the additional, bandwidth or capacity does the opportunity fund have in terms of, each year going forward, what additional future debt service or grant commitments on an annual basis could the opportunity fund support and still maintain a fund balance that is sustainable. And what I have kind of layered in here is a starting point of about $1.4 million, and then growing that about 4% per year, which mirrors the growth of the revenue stream of tied to this fund. And you can see that this has the effect of drawing down the opportunity fund balance down below $1 million for a few years, and then it does start to ramp back up again. And so certainly this fund does have the ability to potentially have more drawn from it, in future years. But this at least will give you some idea of what is the additional annual capacity to take on more support, if you will, that the opportunity currently has based upon the reserves that it is has currently, as well as what is projected to bring in on an annual basis going forward. So and I'm sorry, my voice is starting to go, so I'm going to stop talking and see if there are any questions that I can help answer.
I have a question.
It's your meeting, Ellen.
Pardon me?
It's your meeting.
Oh, all right. Who was first? Mike?
What kind of a band are you looking at in terms of the economy, recession, what goes up, what goes down? It certainly affects the opportunity fund.
Yes, it absolutely does, and this is not set up in such a way where I have gone through over the next 30 years and layered in projections of slowdowns, that sort of thing. But what I've instead done is based our growth upon a kind of a return to normal from what we were seeing during the pandemic, which was quite frankly very robust opportunity fund growth that we were seeing, that was largely reflective of what was happening in retail sales and use tax collections by the county, where during the pandemic there was a lot of stimulus funding going in. There was a lot of spending that was occurring. This model projects a 4.5% average revenue growth, which again is reflective of what our historical growth rate has been for this fund pre-pandemic, and certainly is one that's up for debate. Certain years there's certainly going to be contractions and increases, but the 4.5% is reflective of the last several years pre-pandemic growth rate that this fund's been experiencing. So,
Thanks, Mark.
Joe Murray
Other
had a
questions?
question.
Jeez.
Joe Murray had a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, my question was similar to the last one. I was just wondering if, rather than assuming a 4.5% rate of increase, how much difficulty would it be to say, have a range of like, what is it, 2% to 4.5%? Because things
Sure.
could change quite a bit over the next 25 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can do that on the fly right here, and we can kind of see what those numbers look like.
Thank you.
So you can see here that yes, that would draw those numbers down quite a bit, and so your the level of potential drawdown that you would be able to do would need to shrink considerably. And again, this increase in annual expenditure here, this 3.5% would most likely have to drop down to 2 to keep this solvent. Obviously, these are fund balances here that are very low compared to what we normally would like to see. So that would most likely mean that we would need to probably bring this number down further. But yeah, this is and again, there are multiple sensitivities that we can run through this. You can see just lowering it from 1.4 million of additional annual grants, just lowering it a few $100,000, kick the ending reserves up pretty significantly. So I will change that to maybe 1.3 million and see what that gives us. So, that gets us, a little bit, more breathing room within the reserve levels. So, assuming let's just say revenue grew 2% over the next 30 years, which, again, that's assuming a return to 2% CPI, and there's no further economic development that's happening in the county. Hopefully that's not the case with recompete and everything else that's going on. But that kind of gives you a sense of what what the sensitivities would look like. And I can certainly run different scenarios for the committee and provide those to you at a later date if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
No, the other thing, if I may, we have Todd Melke on. I don't know that all the Opportunity Fund board members have met Todd. He's the county administrator. And I wanted to give Todd an opportunity to share what our thinking was around having this meeting and talking about strategic uses of this fund. It's very helpful for the Opportunity Fund board members. I know one of our obligations is as an administrator of the fund to ensure that you as board members are aware of the different opportunities that might be coming down the pipe, so you can evaluate the importance of one project over another relative to what might be out there rather than just one-offs. So Todd, if you want to give your perspective.
Sure, thanks, Colleen. It's one of those afternoons where I'm bouncing between meetings as well. So for those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet, I am Todd Melke. I started August 1st as the county administrator here in Clallam County. I guess one of my observations with regard to the Opportunity Fund is really, it's a funding source that many communities and many counties do not have. It's unique in the fact that it is one of those that probably has one of the broadest applications of most funding sources compared to others that are available to communities. Most other funding sources are very specific, as you know. Some might be dedicated, we have the 1590 and 1406 funds that are dedicated very explicitly towards low-income housing. You have others that are sales tax for, there's a lot of them that fall under the category of public safety, whether it's juvenile sales tax for facilities, whether it's a public safety sales tax, and the list goes on and on and on. What's unique about this one is, number one, it can be applied to a lot of categories very broadly that fall under the definition of economic development. I think the second thing about it, though, is that it can be applied to every constituent, regardless of demographics, regardless of economic standing, things like that. And so the examples that I would give you is when you think about some of the underlying infrastructure necessary for economic development, those would include things like water systems, sewer systems, telecommunications in some categories. If you had key transportation infrastructure that was necessary for economic development. And then when you think of the beneficiaries, like I say, it is literally everybody in the community that may use that intersection, may use that water system, wastewater system. I think one of the more recent ones is Forks wastewater treatment system, which is once those improvements are in place, the benefit to that goes to all users in that region, whether they be residential, multifamily, commercial, manufacturing, and the list goes on. So while this funding source does have a broad array of uses that it can be used for, I think it's also should be expected that we will probably see more and more people lining up and asking for very explicit uses. So when you see the category of all the things you can use it for, you may have some people go, oh, okay, well, it looks like now the legislature has allowed it to be used for low-income housing. Maybe we should use it all for just low-income housing. I think the debate for the group is really to consider, how do you benefit the broadest group of your constituency, of the citizens of Clallam County, as possible across those uses. And so again, I would just say that any explicit use, sure, the eligibility might be there, but then the question is are you limiting its application to a very small set of the population? And while that might be appropriate for some small projects or for some projects, I think the question for the group to consider is that the best direction for it to go broadly across all uses? As Mark pointed out, there's some capacity in this fund, but depending on the change in economic conditions, it can change dramatically, not only in number, but in time as well.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Donna, you organize this and you have the agenda, so
okay.
please proceed as the
Okay, sure.
facilitator of this meeting.
Happy to do that.
Move on.
So I know, folks from the county have a revenue advisory committee meeting that's coming up. So, if what I've asked for each of the municipalities to present, but I see the port doesn't have any representation here, is first the infrastructure investment. What are they considering? And then next is what would that investment support or facilitate regarding future development in terms of employment and or housing impact, specifically up to 120% of area median income. And then the next high level estimate of project costs, and then lastly, existing matching funds. So the county want to go first?
Ron?
Okay, sure. So, I don't have all of those for you, but first I want to actually go to Carlsberg, talk about the Carlsberg sewer system specifically. So as you all probably know, that was, enabled by the Opportunity Fund to build that original build out of that system. And, it's having an impact on economic growth there slowly, and a little slower than we'd hoped because of some other outside issues like water availability. At this point, with the original build out and then the Village Lane extension which also paid for with Opportunity Funds. That Village Lane extension is actually going to be the main sewer line that a proposed development with up to 200 residences will actually connect through. And they're going through their permitting process right now. We've also got, because of the Opportunity Fund and the Carlsbad sewer system, we've got a 53 residential development on Mill Road and another 22 residential development on the corner of East Runyon and Carlsbad Road. All of that's been enabled by the sewer system and the infrastructure that's paid for by the Opportunity Fund. So going forward, we want to continue in the Carlsbad area to expand that sewer system because the initial build out doesn't cover all of the areas. With the Gupster Road expansion is the first thing that we want to address. As Mark mentioned, we're not looking at doing the small kind of a phase one portion of it. We're looking at
Dubster Road, that this board already recommended it to be funded several years ago.
So I think several years ago, yes, before my time. But that was a phase one, which would have essentially served to provide sewer service to some areas to prevent some from being able to get a waiver for a septic system. So what we're looking at doing now is kind of moving towards that phase two and just servicing that whole area for a full build out in the next few years. That's something that we're looking to put together an application and conceptual design for in a couple of years. With that, that alone, we've already have a preliminary design or conceptual design for the lift station that would be required. And then we have some preliminary drawings for how that area would be serviced. And that, I don't know if you're all familiar with Gupster Road, but this area would be served from 101 north to Gupster and then all the way east to Set Road there. Or west to
Gilbert, around again. Gilbert.
Yeah. So that entire area would be serviced there, and that's a commercial zone, which would, hopefully attract some commercial development in that area as well. That lift station alone looks like that would be preliminary engineering estimates about $2.5 million. And that's not including the installation. Further extensions, we would like to continue the build out of the Carlsbad sewer. Would include the Savannah Road. There's the Village Lane that's already been done, goes south. Savannah Road would go connect to that, servicing Savannah Road between Carlsberg and Village Lane. And there's the Winterhawk area we would like to eventually long-term build that area out. And there's a large block of land south of Runyon and west of Mill Road that's currently not serviced. It was part of the original build-out plan, but there wasn't funding for it at the time. So anyway, that's a short or a long-winded short version of what we'd like to do with Carlsbad to provide sewer service to the entire area. Gupster Road being the primary.
So can you speak to the relative, so there's 6.8 million that's kind of as a placeholder, is what Mark said for payments with Department of Ecology loan. And then there's also the transfer, okay, and then there's the 2.25. So is that the total of the projects that you describe?
Okay, so that is all, what I was just talking about there is work that has not been done yet to complete the build out of Carlsberg. The $6.8 million loan and grant package, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, so what Mark was talking about is the next area that I'm gonna switch over and talk about sewer some more is our existing cloud-based and CQ sewer.
Oh, okay,
Plants and
got it.
collection systems.
Okay,
So that loan and grant package included about $4 million in grants, about $750,000 in forgivable loan, and the remaining amount was a loan.
the
And that's
6.8,
what's shown here,
okay.
that
And
additional 2 million or so.
do you have an amount, an assessment for the Carlsberg new projects? Do you know how much that will be?
It's still in the beginning stage for those, so no, I don't. I just know that those are the things that are on the list here for
Okay,
completing that build out.
so the application that you've submitted, we're
Yeah.
gonna set up a date for that at this meeting towards the end. He just submitted that on Friday. And how much is that? Is that the 2.25 million?
I'm not seeing.
Transfer to Carlsberg sewer for expansion, or is that something different?
No, sorry, if I could jump in, what that represents is that is the more substantive phase of doing the Gupster project that Ron was just describing. So that's what those outlier amounts relate to in 2026, 2027 is. And again, Ron, I think prefaced it by saying those are just very high level preliminary estimates that we dropped into our 5-year capital plans last year. But that does not include the ask that I believe Ron's group is submitted for, which is relating to the ongoing lift station replacement work that's ongoing at Clown Bay CQ.
Yeah, move on to that next, but just to finish with the Carlsberg here, that these numbers here were from quite a while ago. So our updated numbers are, starting with 2.5 million for the lift station plus the gravity pipe installation for that Gupster Road project. So these numbers will be updated.
Okay,
Now, as far as Clown Bay CQ and the application that we've turned in, just a brief synopsis on the Clown Bay CQ, 2 wastewater treatment plants and 2 collection systems out there. They were installed in 1978. They have, we've got a lot of issues with I&I. I&I stands for inflow and infiltration. It's basically water that's not supposed to be in your sewer system. It gets into the pipe, into the network and creates overflows, at least at our plants. That was one of the main problems. So that grant package, that 6.8 million that Mark talked about, which about 4.75 is grant money or forgivable loan. The remaining is the loan that this spreadsheet reflects the payments. So we have, to date, we have replaced a great deal of this downtown CQ sewer and the airport road sewer piping. And so far that has, I like to tell people this just to get an idea for what we're getting for our money. Of course, it's upgraded our infrastructure, but we typically get over 24 overflows at our CQ plant every wet season. And we had 2 this year. So that's a substantial decrease, even though we haven't completed all of those I&I repairs. So we are continuing to finish or to complete the rest of the I&I out there with pipe replacements. And there's just different sections of pipe that we weren't able to get done with this grant package. So we'll be submitting elsewhere a bit first, of course, for some more grants to complete that work. We've also got 7 pump stations in those 2 sewer systems. To date, we've replaced 2 of them. And we've just applied for funding to replace 2 more. Again, these were installed in 1978 and these pumps have been continuously operating ever since. So they are definitely beyond their intended usable life, and all of the sewer system and all of that UGA is supported by those pump stations there. If there's Any questions? About the collection system. If you have any questions for me about those projects that are upcoming in the next, well, some of them are ongoing and some will be continuing in the future.
So what is the total of all the different projects?
So the total of all the different projects, the biggest one that I haven't gotten into yet is that the actual treatment plants themselves are also very old and need to be replaced. We've got a general sewage plan, facilities plan that was done in 2018, and we have an amendment that's a value planning amendment that's been submitted to DOE for approval. And that includes replacement of those plants. The preferred option is to create one plant in CQ that serves Cloud Bay and CQ, and then hopefully a partner in the corrections. So just replacing those treatment plants and creating the one is approximately $24 million. There's the old age and the need for replacement. Because of that, there's also changing requirements and nutrient grant or nutrient reduction requirements by State Department of Ecology that our plants as they are now could not possibly meet. So.
And are there other sources of revenue for that 24 million outside of opportunity funds?
Yes, there are. We will be seeking that as much as we possibly can. Yes.
So your best guess, put you on the spot, sorry, but over the next 5-10 years, what would you estimate the county will be coming before the Opportunity Fund Board for how much money? So I'm trying to figure out how oversubscribed is this, and so that the board members can understand, how much demand is there and weigh, the critical nature of one project against another.
Well, the repair projects out in Cloud Bay CQ are critical. That we have had one of those pump stations fail and we had to fix on an emergency. The other one was operating with a pump that was barely operating for over a year. So we got those two replaced. One of the ones we applied for in this package that we recently applied for has one pump that's leaking. So we've got issues there that need to be addressed very soon. But we also have other funding sources for those too, and that's what we're going to seek first. The $6.8 million package, it's the facilities plan estimated about 14 million to replace all of it. So we know we're going to have to seek more money in order to complete those projects. And there may be some loans in those package where we would again hope to get some help with payments by the EBC. So
great. So I don't know.
I know I'm not giving you the answer.
Maybe the next meeting though, you could, talk to all the staff and, come to us with because we're going to be reviewing an application specifically for lift stations for Carlsberg, for Clallam Bay CQ, that he submitted that application on Friday. And so one of the items, like I said, we're going to do is set a date to evaluate that application. But maybe at that time, you could give us an update, what's your estimate for county projects for the next 5 to 10 years or so?
Yeah, as far as cloud-based CQ is concerned, like I said, there's a need for it, and it's not in new infrastructure, it's old infrastructure.
It's retaining jobs.
That's certainly everything that is or could possibly be out there is supported by that. But there's also changing regulations, and there may be more money available to replace our sewer treatment plants because of that. So there's there are some other funds that may become available. And I know that some of those funds that are these loans or in grants will require us to complete the I&I repairs for us to be eligible for loans for the facilities themselves.
Mike, have a question?
Might be better to get it done before the regulations get changed.
Well,
But my question was.
the thing is, they've already been changed. They just changed them and now there's a holdup and anyway.
Yeah, my question was, one of the goals that we are pursuing is more housing, right? So hand in hand with this with the Guster, improvements, what happens to the zoning? We should be able to have more dense zoning, I would think.
I believe it's-
Like with ADUs, we're at ADU, you gotta have an acre and a half.
I
I think
believe,
there was discussion of an acre and a quarter, but that's not been passed.
Well, actually, in urban growth areas, including, Carlsberg urban growth area, legislation passed just last year at the state level mandates that we allow a minimum of 2 ADUs per parcel. So the code is gonna be updated this year to match, I'm gonna rephrase that, updated before the end of 2025 to match that requirement. But you definitely need pipes in the ground for it to mean anything. And so I for one, wholeheartedly support that level of infrastructure commitment, both in Carlsberg and also in Clallam Bay CQ. That's one of the most significant limiting factors, particularly in those cases where it's not affiliated with an incorporated city. The county has to kind of manage those public services.
So can you anticipate getting down to a R1 or 9,000 square foot lot or something like that out there?
actually, I believe that's zone commercial, residential. I think there's a minimum of 8 to 10 per acre. Isn't that correct?
Well, I think it's 4 to 10 is the range in most of the Carlsberg zones. At least in the residential ones, I'm not sure in the mixed
In that
use.
Guster area, it's a higher density.
Right. There's a lot of potential there if the infrastructure can handle it.
Is demand out there?
There's a lot of interest. We're actually, right now, we're processing a 200 lot division.
Which site?
That's the one, the east of, or west of the industrial park, kind of.
So
South
West
West.
Runyon,
Yeah, right.
West Runyon, it's,
Yeah.
no, we were talking about Carlsberg.
Okay.
Yeah, Clallam Bay CQ is a little slower, but, they've been historically limited also by infrastructure. We're dealing with a situation. I mean, these are 2 parts of the same ball, basically. One is, you want to run out and expand, but to begin with, you've got to take care of your existing service area. I know that's a challenge that both Sequim and Port Angeles face. Even though, I'm looking at that whole issue and boy, I'd sure like to see those pipes get out into the unincorporated urban growth areas and that's another, that's a second discussion on this, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, and I know our focus has been kind of on the sewer infrastructure, but the other important piece out in Carlsberg, UGA also has been water. Water access. And I know Steve Gray, looks like has just joined the call. Steve can certainly, provide more insight into this than I do, but we last year the county entered into, I think, a very meaningful agreement with the PUD to start expanding the amount of water access going out to new areas in Carlsberg. I know there was for a while there a bit of a moratorium on further expansion, and the county had executed an agreement with PUD to basically help remove that barrier. And Steve, is there anything you can add to that in terms of this discussion in terms of the access to water that's should be expanding out there?
We still have Steve? Yeah, there he is. Okay, good.
Steve, you there?
Was he muted when he first came on?
Yeah, he was, and I see where he's trying to talk, but it wasn't coming through. So,
Like that.
Okay.
Well, it looks like Joe has a question. Joe?
I hear a lot of expansion and maintaining what we have in places like Clallam Bay, and I was just curious, what are the criteria for prioritizing these things. It seems to me that if we have a pump failing in Clown Bay, which I think I heard, where is that material going while the pump isn't working? It seems to me that those types of things need to be addressed first. So my question is, Melanie, what are the steps you go through in prioritizing a project?
And in direct relation to that, I guess my first question would be, for alternative funding sources, are there more for unincorporated areas or more for regular incorporated city areas? Is there a funding availability difference?
I don't know the answer to that part of it. I know that most of the water. Yeah, maybe. I was just gonna say that the grants and loans that we've sought so far for the repairs are based on clean water. So they're clean water grants and loans. I don't know that it has.
The grant.
It's state, but it's, yeah, it's kind of a strange. It's kind of a strange.
Steve wants to do it, but your grant is gonna be based on. Did everyone catch that? Just Clown Bay CQ is, since it is kind of a very economically distressed area, but both of those are very small systems in terms of. Thank you. So they're gonna both qualify for grants, a significant portion of grants.
Yeah. So the grant had more grant funding than loan funding because of how distressed the economically that area is.
So is the prioritization based on what grants are available? Or
as far as the repairs for the to the pump stations, it's been based on the condition. So we've had one that failed and that had to be replaced right away. We've had one with one pump fail because each one of these have 2 pumps in them. That one was replaced. We've got the next 2 that we've applied for are the 2 that are in the worst shape, so to speak. So that is the priority that we're using or that's how we're prioritizing which pump station needs to be replaced next.
well, at what point do you compare that to Carlsberg, for example, or do you just consider them independent?
I consider them independent myself. I don't know. The Carlsberg system is relatively new and robust. It's just that we need to, as far as an economic development standpoint, encouraging development and housing, we'd like to continue the build out of that system.
I think the level of detail we may be getting into would be dealt with more in detail when you make your presentation to the board. At that time today, a little broader stroke about the funds and the competition for those funds that we're gonna have to deal with is the primary concern. So I'm gonna ask Colleen.
Sure,
to move
yeah.
ahead.
So I think Squim could go up next. They've got a slide presentation, I understand. So if you'll pull that up for them. Mitch. And hopefully that'll be. Yeah. You guys all see this online? So Matt, do you want to take it or?
Yeah, I'm happy just to kick it off, but really this is Public Works Initiative. We've got 2 representatives that are very close to that. Of course, Amy is the administrative manager, of course, and she oversees a lot of this, but Megan is very close to this as a subject matter expert. We've listed 3 here. We could go on because we all have old aging infrastructure. So we're just interested in trying to make sure we align our opportunities for the Opportunity Fund with your, kind of incentives and criteria. So we've got 3 here that would, and I think Megan's prepared to present those. So yeah.
Yep, so real quick, I'll just say a few words. Amy Doherty, I'm the Public Works Administrative Manager for the city of Stone. I've been with them for a couple of years. Prior to that, I spent a lifetime down at the paper mill, learning all kinds of industrial stuff. So with that experience came the understanding that we are in a world of crisis around here for housing. And joining the city of Sequim led me to understand that crisis for housing comes with crisis for infrastructure. So we spend a significant amount of time down in the city of Sequim going through a prioritization process where we take all of our capital projects from all of our master plans and we grade them and we decide which year they can fall into. And so as a result, we are out searching for $5 to $8 million worth of grant funding every year. And so we have picked out 3 projects that we feel fully fit the goals of the Opportunity Fund. And so Megan's going to present them to you guys in the order of which we believe they fit the best.
Yes, thank you everyone for having us here for this kind of special process around the Opportunity Fund. I think it's really great to be able to look at some of the bigger picture. We have not submitted any applications for these particular projects, but we have some that we want to share with you today, get feedback if you have it. The city of Sequim has actually only submitted to the Opportunity Fund back in 2012, and we did not receive it then. So we've certainly been looking at that as we, again, sort of look for ways to help, support infrastructure in the city, but as the UGA and beyond, we really serve as a regional utility provider in a few ways that we'll discuss today. So my name might seem familiar because I was with Palm County Public Works, also been with City of Port Angeles Public Works. I'm now in Sequim, really focusing on, again, our capital improvement program and funding. So one thing we wanted to share with you, just a little background on Sequim. I think people sometimes think of us as Bell Hill, but we are the little town below that's actually in the UGA. And our median household income actually reflects that. We are a little lower than the county and Port Angeles, have a little higher poverty rate. We have also obviously have an exceptional growth rate. We've doubled our population in the last few decades, and we continue to see an extreme amount of growth in terms of housing development. And to that effect, we've really taken advantage of some of the infrastructure funding that's out there, federal and state, and we've been really pursuing a lot of grants and kind of low interest loans. However, the projects, go ahead and advance to the next slide. Sort of, this is a snapshot of our capital improvement program over the next 5 years. The purple below is the commitment that the city consistently makes to our funding our own projects, big and small. We, rely on developer funds as well, of course, that they are required to contribute when it's a developer, kind of really a development project. And then the blue, we've taken out a significant amount of, again, low interest loans through Public Works Board and other places to make sure that we're, again, maintaining our infrastructure and upgrading it as necessary to meet growth and to serve the Sequim UGA as well as in the city. We have secured grants in 2025. That's the bright orange, but that grants needed is kind of why we're here today. We have 3 projects we're going to share, and they're high priority again because of the need and the breadth that they serve, but also that they really fit economic development well. Whereas, some of the other things we can go to other grant and loan sources for, but here, these particular projects, as I'll share, are a little more difficult, but we think they really fit this Opportunity Fund really well. Next slide. So this is our top ask today that we want to share with you. It's Reservoir Road, water main, and a booster station. So this is to fund both the design and construction of a water booster system. And that's going to serve actually all that area outlined in black. This is kind of uphill. It is in our, this is kind of a new service area that's being developed. The red circle is where the booster station would go, but that would allow us to serve new developments that are actually even underway. We've got preliminary engineering already on that has showed us it's gonna be about 3.9 million. To do this includes also, water mains that will loop. Always a good thing in a water system. Next slide. So, the big benefits or what comes out of this, as you've asked us to present, is housing. This is all really zoned for residential housing. Workforce housing that we know from our biggest employers is really, there's a dearth and is needed. And we've already got, so those blue areas again are those same areas that would be served by this booster station. The kind of red hatch marked, that's ones that are already in process and they're just waiting for this booster station. Again, between these two areas, we're looking at upwards, 3,300 dwelling units at full build out, that would be served by this. And then there's some additional benefits that this would help us, with water reservoir improvements, meaning that our water will be able to run through our current reservoirs faster, which is good. You don't want your water to sit for too long. And we would be able to build a future reservoir uphill, which is important as we get a lot of questions about drought right now, as I'm sure many of the other municipalities do. And this would give us another opportunity for water storage, increasing our water storage capacity. With looping, we also get better fire flow. Squims commercial zone, you all are very familiar with Walmart, Home Depot, Costco. We want to improve fire flow capacity there, as well as to all the residential areas there in South Squim. So again, to help us meet this housing development needs and other improvements.
Looks like you're muted.
Chris, now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great.
Mark.
Hopefully you caught some of that. Other one. But again, so we know that there's some unknown, some developer contribution. We're working on that analysis, but we can really only count on, the few that are there at this point. Yet this would be paid. This comes out of our water enterprise fund, that kind of development. And we are kind of at capacity right now because another big project we are taking on is a deep well. So drilling a deeper well at our Silverhorn well field so that we can, boost our water availability, water capacity, water quality, a lot of those issues. So we've really kind of maxed out the water, the revenue in our water enterprise account. And that's why we're coming here and looking at this fund in particular that could offer grant and loan to be able to meet this kind of immediate need for this project. Go to the next one, please. So this is our second project. We're really excited to share. If you haven't heard, I know that the EOC is kind of making all the headlines right there. Thank you. So the new EOC in Port Angeles, Palm County, that's making all the headlines, but we have our operations facility where we do all of our all of our utility infrastructure, personnel and equipment is located there. So this project is design and construction of a new operations building, a truck barn, a fueling station with a backup generator, remodel of existing facilities. You can see it's a huge price tag, 35 million. And this is one that we're struggling to find, good grants out there for. So we've come up with a 2 million city match. And we're looking for 2 million to complete phase 1 site construction, meaning that we get the utilities in the ground. This would benefit the surrounding area with some additional water looping. And we look at this as an economic development project because again, if you want to go to the next slide, you can see that the purple, that was our historical UGA. We've expanded that to the green. And even beyond that, we are general utility service area to Carlsberg. We actually provide like the sewer maintenance and operations for the Carlsberg system from the city of Swims, with their crew and with our equipment. Same for Jamestown and Blinn. There's an extension out there to the casino. So we process all of that wastewater. And again, we also help with a lot of the daily operations. So, and Bell Hill as well. And so that service territory, we've just continued to excel and help out the general area, thinking that it's better for everything to go to one water reclamation facility or treatment plant. So to that, we again are really, we provide that kind of basic infrastructure for all of these places to operate. And our city shop is really where we generate a lot of economic activity. We contract with other local contractors for our capital projects and for our operations and maintenance. We are a growing employer. You can see that picture at the right. That's a shop floor where we should be doing work, and we've had to set up makeshift offices in a building that has no bathrooms because basically our shop was built in the 90s, and since that time, we've doubled in population and increased our city size.
Squim didn't have indoor bathrooms in 1990.
Well, not in that particular building. So we basically moved out into our storage shed. Yes. Come and see it if you want. We'd love to tour it. So we're just trying to get some, again, for this project, we want to just get that, continue to get that moving as we continue to search for funding to upgrade this shop and expand it. Next slide. So our last big project, this is really exciting, we think, both for us and for regional folks, because we are extending sewer and water down West Swim Bay. And, I know Clallam County Environmental Health is excited. We're going to try to pull some things off septic that we really don't want close to this beautiful bay. So that, again, this full project to extend and build a lift station right there where the green is, that's at Forest Road. That's a full $19.2 million. We've received 2.52 from the Department of Ecology and grant, and continue to pursue for funding, as well as assessing developer contribution that will come around to this. Go ahead to the next slide. But you can see in red, so the green line is that kind of that same line you just saw. And that red is that whole area that this would serve. So this is very much a development project, and that 89% of this extension is going to serve growth, which has actually reduced our grant ability, like the ability to get grants, because you don't get grants as much for development. You get it for kind of existing. So that's one reason we're here today. This was really spurred on by PNNL coming and knocking on our door and saying, we've got funding to expand our lab. We want to add 200 to 300 jobs over the 89 or 80 that we have so far, but we have to have sewer and water. So that's the big impetus for this project. And then there are existing development, existing homes in there, developments that are permitted and underway that will be served by this. This would allow for the marina, whatever expansion or conversion that they're interested in to be done in the future, as well as that whole, planned resort community area. Any of that is going to be served off this line. So that lift station allows for that full build out in there. So we're really excited about that. Here you go. That is the ask. I hope I covered the match, the total project.
Thank you.
And,
great job.
what it would do.
Nice job.
Yeah.
A question about affordable housing
Mhm.
in this one area, addressing that, because we always run into the cost of housing up here.
Mhm.
That makes it difficult for people to move here for the jobs that we have now.
Yeah.
And that last one you talked about doesn't look like that particularly tuned into affordable housing, because I know that terrain is pretty healthy, property value wise.
Yeah.
But the cost and so forth, how are you prioritizing, trying to facilitate more affordable housing as part of it?
Yeah, I think we're also updating our code, right? Everyone's going through that comprehensive plan update where we have elements of middle housing that we're going to be addressing through our code updates, increasing with zoning with ADUs and things like that. We recently received a Department of Commerce grant from, for the, it was called CHIP, the Connecting Housing and Infrastructure Project. So we use that to help Habitat for Humanity they have a 35 to 50 unit development that's happening also in that South Swim area. So, we're committed with whatever developer can come our way and help, meet that affordable housing. That's part of it, the city, but we're doing what we can certainly to help with that. And we do think, with a lot of these projects, again, we just know that the county needs units, and that does drive the supply and demand on, opening up other housing and also retaining some of that workforce that is so critical to the services here, the hospital, the tribes, the governments, everybody needs a place to live. And we do think as, those units just get built, then that allows, some people may move into that and open up other units and things like that. So those are some of the things we're doing for affordable housing.
Thank you.
Well,
I just got a dumb question, but on your first slide,
Yeah.
you showed Squim's average income was the lowest in Powell County.
Well, not lower than Forks.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Oh, where's wrong?
False one.
Yeah.
But you have the highest housing cost.
Yeah.
How does anybody afford to live there?
They're retired.
Yeah.
They
High
help
net
scat.
worth.
So is that number skewed? Because you divided some fictitious number by a number of people who are working? Is it household income is only $48,000, including interest income and investment income, disposable income that people could get? Because if it is, that means that you're asking Port Angeles and the rest of the county to support people on an unequal, non-proportional basis to what their houses are worth and what money is available to those people to pay for that stuff themselves.
Just obviously not, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I want to kind of input to it or answer it.
Yeah.
And that is, you're talking about a different population when you talk about housing costs. Because you're talking about a regional housing cost in Sequim, which includes Bell Hill, outside of the city limits of Sequim. And when you're looking at Sequim, and the population of Sequim, you're looking at a bunch of mobile home parks and some really old housing inventory.
That's exactly right. And those numbers came off the last census, so that's.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
That's the source.
We certainly had that same conversation. And again, I think, because there's just obviously perception that Bell Hill is Sequim. And again, it's not, and that it's outside the city limits. And there's some other interesting factors in that we've discussed. I mean, for instance, the money that comes in on our general facility charges when folks hook up, and Amy, you might be able to explain this better, is coming from our citizens within the city. But again, we are still serving some of those, like Carlsberg, for instance, when a folk from Carlsberg signs up for sewer, they're paying the county, but we are we're still using our infrastructure to support the operation.
And the county takes care of some of that.
The county pays for the percentage.
And they do pay, yes,
They use.
Yeah.
yes.
But it is that, we're within that smaller footprint is the city of School, right? So that's our immediate concern in our services. And those outline, if you look at actually how the distribution of housing goes and the cost of that housing, those high costs are just outside our limits. So they don't actually contribute to what those same people living in the trailer homes are trying to contribute.
Until you charge the user fee.
Which is.
Yeah. 1.5 times.
There is an outside of the limit user fee. Yep, we do try and recoup what we can there. But again, to increase the amount of available housing by 3,000 units, that's our first project. That's a huge amount. I mean, we're only 8,000 people. So by increasing 3,000 units, that's big. That's a big number of people that could find a place to live. It's an inventory increase for sure.
I think you factor in the difference between families that are working, still working, and the huge number of retirees in Sequim who are not earning at a job, who largely brought their money with them. And how do you consider looking at those in terms of average income?
Let's see if I'm trying to.
Well, let me make one little comment here. I think over the years, it seemed that, and this is when I go politically incorrect. Over the years, it seems that because Sequim has been perceived as rich, Bell Hill, that there has been adverse reaction to Sequim. Sequim only made one application. It was turned down. It was for economic development. It is for infrastructure, and very similar projects have been approved for other places in the country. I think sometimes there's a reverse discrimination because of the perception. I'm a retiree. I live in the metropolitan area, not within the city limits. But the other thing that I think people sometimes forget is because of those retirees that live in that metropolitan area, that's where the revenue that supports this fund comes from to a greater degree than Port Angeles or Portland or, wherever. So at some point, I think there has to be a little equity and looking beyond the immediate information and see that helping Sequim develop and put in some of those workforce type housing will support what is becoming a commercial center. There's a reason that some of those companies have located in Sequim, and that's probably more geographical than anything else because it's a good location between the bridge and Forks. But helping Sequim become solid and being able to support that workforce that doesn't now have to transport themselves to PA or someplace else to live actually builds a better economic basis for the entire county. And I just hate to see Sequim negated because of the perception that there's all these rich people living there. I'm retired. I bring my money through my retirement and Social Security. Okay. And there's a lot of folks there. And I just think we have to look beyond the immediate and look at long-term potential for the county. And that could be the very positive thing if Sequim is helped economically when they need it too.
Understood. I was more addressing the figure of average income of $48,000. You can assess people that are working and paying taxes and find those statistics, but people that are retired, that don't have an income check, say, on the tax rolls, how does that factor into that $48,000 average income? That's what I was asking. Statistically, how is that taken into account, Mike?
And the fact that there was a denial on the Sequim's request, the criteria for acceptance or approval of a opportunity fund grant at that time was a lot more stringent than it is today. In fact, it was how many jobs do you create? And there was not an answer to that.
Well, and I've got the list of I've had the list of all the projects that have been awarded and the so there was one grant to Forks and then there had not been any funding that had gone to, I'm sorry, there was a loan to Forks for their pool. But so the grant that was given to the city of Forks for their wastewater treatment facility was the first one ever since the inception of the Opportunity Fund. And that I've got the list, and the vast majority have gone to the city of Port Angeles and to the county UGA areas. But that's just, you know, something to consider. So we only have 12 minutes left, and we still have the city of Port Angeles to present. Ethan?
Yeah, I'll try and
And
keep it
also
short.
Port and Forks. So we might have another gathering.
All right, sounds great. I'll try and keep it short in case anybody else does want to go. The main project that we're looking at is the A Street Basin. The A Street Basin really supplies the sewer for the whole west side of the city as well as our western UGA. That project is estimated at $4 million. So I think the real benefit there is it would also support the programs that we already have in place as far as our fee waiver programs, sales and use tax programs, and the density that we're looking at trying to include on the west side, we're having trouble doing that because we have this capacity constraint in the A Street Basin. It's also kind of killing our ability for projects. We've got numerous projects in the UGA that we want to move forward with, and we just can't extend out there because the A Street Basin is really blocking everything. So that's the main project.
Could you define that area you're referring to?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are you talking about?
Sure. So it's just across the bridges over here. There's a line that really runs north and south that defines really the break of West Port Angeles and the city proper here in the middle. Be helpful if we could pull up our map. Great. Sure.
Who's watching?
Yeah. Yeah, so right on the other side of the Tumwater, yeah.
Yeah.
Right on the other side of Tumwater, there's a line that kind of runs parallel to the creek, the valley, Tumwater Creek, and everything west of that, there's sewer constraint issues. That also affects our stormwater capacity because of the I&I, which is the inflow and infiltration. So we have a program right now actually where we're trying to replace the sewer grates because a lot of the stormwater will get into the sewer through the grate and the manhole covers. And that's kind of overloading our capacity. And then problem is though, even if we did fix A Street, we also need to address the stormwater, not just the sewer. Because we have fixed a couple of the manhole covers and then flooded Lincoln Park in the process. It's the stormwater went over there. So
what's the estimated cost of stormwater and sewer for the A Street Basin area?
It's $4 million for that whole project.
For both?
Yeah, to fix that whole entire basin going through.
How many home sites are not able to be built on? Do you, Tim, or do you guys have any info? And is that servicing the UGA as well? It is.
Yeah.
It handles everything on Fairmont, Spruce, everything headed west. What is it, 18th? That runs down and everything on the west end ties into A Street and then runs down the hill. And that's where the backup is right there on A Street.
I've heard about this limitation from real estate brokers, actually, that they went to sell some property and they find that they cannot develop the property because of this A Street Basin. But understanding how many existing lots and how many potential future development, how many lots there it would support would be really helpful.
Right now, the county has 11 homes and 3 duplexes sitting up off of Fairmont that are on hold because they can't develop with the issue situation. And that's just, they're right outside and they would tie in and run.
That's not the total though, is it?
No, that's just a development right now, 11 homes that's ready to go. That he's ready to start building yesterday, if it could, and then there's a lot of area behind there.
Yeah.
And frankly, the west side is one of the only places
Everything.
that we can expand affordable housing anywhere around the city.
There's that, there's also potential for additional industrial land over there. We have in the unincorporated urban growth area, industrial reserve zoning designated as such because it lacks the infrastructure. And, no offense to the timber industry, we'd rather it not be a log dump. We'd rather it be, manufacturing of some kind, family wage job. And with efficient use of the space that is out there. And the only way to achieve that, of course, is to get sewer and water to it.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
And so, and this is the concept, when I said there's 2 parts to this, the cities have to take care of themselves first. They have to take care of their service areas. We need to think of that as the first step in expanding. And in expanding is where we do the one thing that we can do when it comes to achieving affordable housing. I was listening to the spiel on the policy development that we're obligated to do under the Growth Management Act to develop policies for targeting income segments for affordable housing. And it's something of an impossibility. We have no control over the costs that regulation introduces. We have no control over continuing supply chain issues. But as we come out of we're still post-pandemic. We're not normalized yet. And there are other factors. I mean, the GMA itself reduces the area that we can think about for resolving housing issues. And these are all things that we cannot come up with an alternative to. But what we can do is get infrastructure into these places, start to develop additional numbers. That is the supply side. And that's what we're missing right now.
Yep.
And then take advantage of every opportunity as we go to increase the availability of affordable housing. That to me is the strategy.
That covered, or do you have more?
There's a little bit more. Appreciate you guys.
Sure. Please.
The other thing, is the Emergency Operations Center is also over on that side of town. And we estimated that it'd take about 1.7 million to get the sewer and 1.7 million to get the water out to the EOC. But none of that can happen until we fix 8th Street Basin also. So those are next steps. Those are additional projects we're looking at, which is total another 3.4 million. But for us to even get there, we need to address
Will
the
the
8th Street
water
Basin.
sewer serve other housing besides just the EOC, or is that exclusively for that facility?
That extension, the 1.7 million is specifically for that. I mean, that being said, though, that goes into our UGA, and that's something that we can build off of to start addressing additional housing development in that area. So that's specific project. Yeah.
Anything else? Looks like Joe.
I think so.
Joe, question?
Yeah, I heard mention that you don't want a log dump in an industrial area, and I thought that's where log dumps were supposed to be located, and I'm curious why you wouldn't want one if someone wanted to open it.
I'm sorry, Joe. I invited that criticism. My point was, what was my point? My point was a densified industrial area with manufacturing, et cetera. I mean nothing to disparage the timber industry. And by all means, if one wants to go in there, we would support it all the way.
So again, very little time left, and we have still the city of Forks and the Port of Port Angeles. Paul Hampton. Paul, do you want to go ahead? From the city of Forks?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I did print out an email that Rod sent earlier today.
Yeah,
That goes,
Go ahead.
oh, you go ahead. I didn't know if you wanted to reference this.
Yeah, I was just gonna read that. That's all I have, because I spoke with Rod this morning and I've been busy. I've been filling in for the wastewater treatment guys, so I'm actually hands-on down there doing all the testing and stuff, so I haven't had a lot of time. But I can go through this if you would like.
Sure, just maybe a quick high-level overview.
Yep. So Rod was talking about the recompete phase, so it sounds like he's been working on that, and he's got roughly $380,000 to undertake the specific assessments of one, the internal mill site, the mill building, short platting a property to allow the longer term leases on the portions of the property. So that's our talking about our industrial park area, and that's our. There's not a lot going on, as you know, with the mill right now, so we're trying to get that up and going. And we're currently working with people that he's got a small milling operation that he's expecting $25 an hour jobs, if we can get that going. Along with that industrial park, we have the North Ocklawaha water tank that we actually use some of the ARPA funds to go to engineering for that to get the price estimate for that, and it's looking at about $5 million for a 1,000,000-gallon tank. And that would also help the city, as in for water storage for firefighting, and if anything ever happened on that side of the bridge or to the bridge, that would provide a lot more storage for those businesses and or homes on that side, plus the development of the whatever the tribe ends up doing with their property on that side. They've been talking about gas stations and casinos and stuff like that. So some of that would be shared with the developer and others, however else we'd get the money. As for water main, water stuff, we're looking to extend the main. We have a 8-inch main that runs in our city airport that is fed by a 2-inch main. I've been trying to fix that for a while, and it does affect our fire flow in that area. Plus, there's a lot of houses. I kind of see it like, because we have this, I think we can't have a well inside the city limits, so we have to provide water to houses. And when you get past Russell Road, our city limits go all the way to a road called Bunker Road, and there's houses and their water lines are so mixed up. They're crossed creeks and weird stuff going on there. There's houses that have wells, and there's a lot of properties there. There's also commercial properties for that could be for businesses if they ever wanted to be there, but we don't have the right water line. We don't have hydrants or anything like that down there. So we're looking at about, well, I told Rod 250,000, but that's the city doing the install. So it'd probably be more than that if we ended up having to have a contractor. But we try to out here in the city, we try to take on stuff as much as we can because we don't have the money like a lot of people do. We don't. Our city council tends to try to keep the taxes down, which is awesome for the community. But then again, our stuff doesn't get paid for like that. Like with the sewer project. And speaking of the sewer, so our wastewater, you guys are familiar with the project with the clarifier, but we also have several other projects with that. One big one would be the biosalt stuff that we'd like to get that taken care of one of these days. And I think that one was, I don't have the numbers on top of my head, but I think it was around 2 million if I was correct on that. And then we have smaller projects, replacing pumps and stuff like that, I know we got a big one going right now, so we probably wouldn't expect anything more from you guys right now, but maybe some smaller projects we might be looking for that. I'm hoping that I can sit down with Rod again and get a more structured cost estimate and stuff that we might go for later on with you with the Opportunity Fund Board. That's about all I have. Pretty quick, if that works for you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Caleb,
you.
do you share anything? unless anybody has any questions, sorry. Caleb?
Yes, ma'am. No, the only thing that I would point out is just the projects that we are currently doing. The Marine Trade Center, as you all know, is kicking off in June. That's funded through the port and through other grant funding. But in addition to that, we have been asked to potentially participate in the EOC building. That might be some funding that would be looking for in the future, or maybe potential development of land. But that being said, I don't have any specific numbers for those.
So just to clarify, the Marine Trade Center, you've got, the port has funding for the infrastructure in the ground, but opportunity funds could be spent on a building that would be leased out. And is that something the port is contemplating requesting in the future?
Yes, ma'am. So originally, when we had done that, when we had submitted that grant, that was pre-2019 prices. So now everything that we thought that we could have got done with that grant at that $9 million price tag is now a $19 million price tag. So now we are putting the infrastructure in the ground and on those types of things. But yet we had contemplated opportunity funds in the future for potential further development.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Any
So-
other issues, questions, concerns before we wrap? I'd like to make one comment. Mike and I have been on this board and others for a long time, and we have never had the amount of information as we have available to us. Right now, we have been asked in the past for many years, sometimes to make recommendations almost in a vacuum, not really understanding what else is coming down the pipe, who's going to be competing for the funds, and sometimes without a really good spreadsheet. So these things are developed through the EDC stewardship as the administrator to provide the tool for the board, have been absolutely excellent. And we've never had something like this where we're looking into the future to see what we're going to be weighing our requests against. So I want to acknowledge Colleen for taking the leadership to organize this and give us more tools and more context, so we don't feel like we're making recommendations in kind of a vacuum at a moment in time and not understanding the overall implications. So thank you and your staff.
Well, and also, as I've shared, Peninsula Housing Authority is planning to come with an ask of $2 million for their project at, where is it?
7th and Gale.
7th and Gale.
Upland Heights.
So,
Their project out there, where their opportunity funds went through there. Like Todd had, can I jump in?
yeah,
Like Todd had addressed, every year, the legislature seems to expand more and more on what the opportunity fund can do. You know, 2019, it was just basically economic development and building facility, infrastructure and facility for economic development. Then it went to affordable housing for 120% of AMI and below. But with that it's infrastructure and facility. This past year, they went in and they looked at land also, that you can acquire land for infrastructure. As a housing director out here, you know, and I've talked with Bill, the number one need, if you're looking at housing, is 80 to 120% of AMI. When you're looking at it, you're looking at a missing middle out here that your workforce can't afford to stay. Because you're going to train them and they're going to go somewhere that they can afford to buy a home and do that. You know, I was on the phone with HUD today talking about multifamily accelerator lending program. That, you know, if you go out and buy the land, you get lender to buy it, you know, you partner with some people that need workforce housing, whether it's Jamestown, whether it's the private developers here, take out a loan, buy the property, do the building and keep it, you know. You can do Inland, he was talking about Inland Group out of Airway Heights. That Colville went in there, partnered with them. They built 250 units of affordable housing. The workforce housing, that you're making it to where, you know, even Jamestown, you hear that, well, you gotta keep people out here. Nobody wants to come out here because there isn't, you know, we have people doing the low end, people doing the upper end. And the middle's the one that's not being done. And
So-
that's, from
yeah.
Opportunity Fund.
What kind of prompted this was the application that we anticipate will come from Peninsula Housing Authority is how many units?
24.
24 units. But we were also talking about the A Street Basin. And if that was funded, how many affordable units would be built in that area that it serves through private development? And would it be a lot more than 24 units? Or if you double, so they're saying $4 million, would it be more than 48 units, affordable units? Because that's what, do the math on it, $2 million, 24 units. It's a lot of money per unit. And so that's that was the beginning of this conversation. Like, we need to know what are all the different projects that are out there that could spur affordable housing, workforce housing, and then also jobs, good paying jobs. And so I think City of Sequim did a fabulous job. And I'd like to see the other entities present something a little more similar so that we can compare apples to apples and have a good idea of not just evaluating one application that comes in, but that compared to, understanding the full breadth of the applications that are going to be coming in. Yeah.
Is the Opportunity Fund Board, are you guys looking to take a lot of these things you've heard, whether it's Peninsula Housing Authority or the EOC, sort of putting it in a year? I mean, I know that was just a model, but Mark was laying out how much you might spend per year. And see that in some years you have pretty significant, ending fund balance. So maybe in the future you thought, well, it would be fine if we spent 10 million that year. What can we do to help you?
Yeah, this is the first time we've seen this.
Okay.
So now it's a matter of discussing this and how could we slip these in? What are the priorities? And where would they be slipped in? And, talking to the county commissioners and also what are their priorities? I think we understand it, but, anyway, just, they want this board to be an advisory board to them. So, getting the 6, maybe soon to be 7 people together talking about what should these priorities be? And when are these different projects going to be ripe for funding?
The outcome on a lot of these projects is really the same, except for the cost is very dependent on what the wages being paid would be. So we need to know when the project comes before us, whether it's gonna be prevailing wage or is it gonna be local wage? It makes a hell of a lot of difference.
Just right. Volume of units built, yeah.
Well, if it's infrastructure owned by a city or the county, it's going to be prevailing wage. Because any public works project will always be public prevailing wage.
Well, you're talking about end user, aren't you? Versus
I'm talking
construction.
about the whole project and how they come together with their numbers.
Well,
Yeah.
if you looked at Megan's, where she had 3,300 houses coming on board, that's majority private residence being built. But from the real estate perspective, that when you add that, that's adding stock, so that's adjusting the rest of the inventory here. And so a lot of that will lower prices and make the houses affordable for workforce housing, just off supply side.
But one thing that, like Alan said, it's nice to know what's out there. But if you look at the total in this spreadsheet, hasn't enough money to do any of them. So somehow we have projects smaller or a lot, an amount of money to the city of Springs, whatever they say, and say, here, give us your best bang for the buck request.
Those funds can be used in conjunction with other funds too.
Yeah.
So.
And that's different from how we had to look at in the
No,
past.
we had to look at it like you said.
Yeah.
Because we were given a project.
Right.
A pool of forks. And we decided, okay, we've got enough money in these, I'm not
We have
going
no
to.
context though.
Yeah.
But I've been planning for years.
But if we go with what everybody asked for today, you're either gonna have to make a hard decision and give it to one and everybody else suffers. And doesn't get what they need. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing act. It's,
Yeah.
and I do applaud everybody for coming, spending their time, and this information is very valuable. But in that, now we need to come up with an answer for it,
Yeah.
that we can all.
Well, and
Everybody.
I'd like, all of the municipalities to probably, I'll create a form that's very specific, like name of the project and it just answers some things so we can kind of, and when would it be ready? When do you expect? This would be shovel ready and you want the funding so we can kind of maybe slot it out and give it, create a matrix, to grade everything and maybe, you know, we don't know what's coming down the pike, but there is over $50 million of potential funding if it's at 1.4 million, starting at 4% increase. If, you know, using, Mark's beginning, sensitivity analysis. And that's quite a bit, but I think there's an equity issue for across the county. And then there's also what gives you the biggest bang for the buck and a timing issue.
It's important because, as Caleb said, what was $9 million just a few years ago is $19 million now.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yes.
I agree, that's unfortunately the way it is, but they're trying to let's figure out an answer.
And there is a lot of value, I think, if there's the prevailing wage question for the pipes that go in the ground that are owned by a municipality. But then is that serving a project like Peninsula Housing Authority that has to pay prevailing wages for the 24 units? Or is that leveraging housing that would be created by the private sector that maybe would be, you know, it's not government money. We're leveraging private money.
Yeah.
And is
we-
that affordable or workforce housing?
Can we build something ourselves and sell it to the city or the county or whoever it is?
Sure.
As long as it's after the fact and we don't know it before. If we know it before, then it's automatically have to use the very words.
Wonder if you're.
I don't know you.
I know. I haven't heard anything.
Joe Murray?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna agree with your suggestion that we have a list with a little bit of a summary of what each project is, because that'll help us focus better.
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, I would like to schedule a meeting to review Ron's application, so, while we're here, if that's okay? All right, I'll do a doodle. When to meet, Paul?
Thank
Okay,
you for being here, everybody. This is great. Colleen, thank you so much for the leadership to put this together.
sure, happy to do it. Thank you for coming. Appreciate everyone.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, Joe.
But those cameras, they really swing. When I was watching you on the TV last time, the cameras shouldn't